by its very definition, freedom can never be absolute, because the freedom of speech of everyone, let us say your freedom of speech to talk of something in national interest, is limited by similar freedom of all other citizens. If you have the freedom of speech to say Bharat Mata ki Jai, then I have the freedom of speech to say that it is sedition. Because I have the same freedom of speech which you have. You can say Bharat Mata ki Jai and I can disagree with it. I can say I don't regard Bharat as a Mata. So, how can you dispute his right to say that it is sedition? Freedom of speech includes the right to say that the way you are exercising your freedom is sedition. He may be right, you may be right, I do not know.
Thank you, sir, and you left us to think about what is right and what is not. And now let's go to the 8th question, sir. It goes like this way: citizens must become proactive these days. How can this be done? Should fundamental duties be made compulsory? Can voting be made compulsory for all citizens under 18 years?
I think it includes more than one question. Citizens must become proactive. Democracy presupposes active citizenry. If the citizens are not participants in the democratic process, it cannot be considered a democratic polity. So citizens have got to be, almost by definition, to be active participants in the democratic process. Not today, but always. The saying also goes, eternal vigilance is the price of liberty, and that applies to democracy as well. Can voting be made compulsory? Should fundamental duties be made compulsory? Now, unfortunately, fundamental duties chapter was also not there in the original constitution. It was added by an amendment. And incidentally, one of the good things that was done during emergency was the addition of this fundamental duties chapter. Do you know what is the first fundamental duty in chapter, in part 4A of the Constitution? Anybody? The person who asked the question, will you tell me what is the first fundamental duty? Who has asked this question?
I did ask, sir.
Huh? You asked
the question, yes, sir.
Okay. What is it?
I'm not know the verbatim, but it goes this way: to abide by the Constitution and give respect to our national institutions and flag, etc.
Very right. The first fundamental duty of every citizen, the words used are of every citizen, is to abide by the Constitution and respect its ideals and institutions. Now, how many of us, and then of course it refers to national anthem, respect for national anthem and national flag. How many of us, and when I say us, I mean the people of India, or every citizen, how many of these, every citizen really know that there is a fundamental rights chapter or part in the Constitution? If they do not even know that there is such a part in the Constitution, how do you expect them to abide by the Constitution? Mr. Sabu is very fond of repeating what I said in another meeting one day at Delhi, that there is tremendous constitutional illiteracy in the country. People do not know what the Constitution is. In one of the interview boards, which you are going to face, many years back, I happened to ask a interviewee who had topped in political science at his university. And I asked him, after some questions were asked by other members, I asked him if he had ever read the Constitution of India. He said, yes, he has read Vasu work, and he said, I also read your book. And I said, no, I am asking you, have you read the text of the Constitution of India? He said, sorry, no. I said, have you seen the Constitution of India? And believe me, he said, no, he had not. Now, of course, more people have seen it. This was some years back. He had not seen the Constitution of India, and he was appearing in the interview, and he had talked in MA political science. So, that is why I say that we have this constitutional illiteracy, and that applies not only to civil servants, it applies to members of parliament, it applies to ministers, it applies very much to journalists, and it applies to big officers in the North Block and South Block and Delhi, and it applies, I'm sorry to say, even to advocates and judges. I have faced it, I have experienced it, and I say it without any fear of contradiction, because I talk to them both in public domain and privately. How many of you, I'll give you two examples, how many of you talk of center-state relations? Even your question papers may have talked about center-state relations. Center-state relations. Is the word center or the term center-state relations anywhere in the Constitution? Can you support your statement about center-state relations, including in the Bombay judgment, which was referred to later earlier? Center-state relations are mentioned. A commission was appointed, Secretariat Commission. That was also Commission on Center-State Relations.
Yes, sir.
But the Constitution does not speak, and the Constitution makers definitely, positively discarded the word center. Coming back to your cooperative federalism, if you think in terms of center and states, you cannot have cooperative federalism. When you say center, I sometimes say that words are very powerful things. When you use a particular word, an image is created in your mind. When you use the word center, what is the image that is created? That of a point in the middle of the circle. Center is a point in the middle of the circle. The impression it creates, or the image that it builds, is that of center of authority. Center of authority is in Delhi, and states are in the periphery. As if all the authority belongs to the center, and the states are in the periphery. Why? The correct word to use, which the constitution makers used, and which is part of the constitution, is union-state relations. Union-state relations. Union, the moment you say union, it is the whole circle. Union is the whole circle, while center is a point in the middle of the circle. And union-state relations give you the image of the whole in its relationship with its parts. It is the relationship between a whole and the part. I mentioned this just to give you an example of constitutional illiteracy in the country, because Parliament has not stopped using the term. The other day, I cannot mention because Parliamentary Committee proceedings are supposed to be confidential, but Parliament has not stopped using it. The ministers, officers don't stop using it. And why they keep using it, that is a separate story, because it was used in the 1919 Government of India Act. Government of India 1919, which continued to be operation at the union level or central level till 15th August 1957. There was provincial autonomy, but at the so-called central level, the 1935 Act had not come into operation and 1919 Act continued. And that spoke of central government, central authority, central laws, etc., etc. So because the Babus in North Block and South Block continued to use the word center on the files, all the ministers, parliamentarians, and judges, they were led to use the word center, and even to this day, the colonial model of 1919 Act continues to do mischief with our psyche. And it has caused a great mischief in union-state relations, because the message given is wrong. The message given is that of center of authority, center deciding to give some powers to the states, center deciding to decentralize power, as if the power belongs to the center, and they are now condescending to give a bit of it to the states. It is not the correct position. The other example I give you, how many of you know the provision in regard to removal of judges? How can the judges be removed?
So that's by the 1968 Act of Judges Removal Procedures.
Huh?
By 1968 Judges Removal Procedure Act, sir.
And what is the process of removal?
The process is that it must be moved in particular house, either in the Rajya Sabha or the Lok Sabha. A resolution should be passed with the 1/4 members, and then the speaker or the presiding person has to accept it.
What is it called? Huh?
Removal of judges. Procedure to remove judges.
Yes, you are right. But have you not heard of the term impeachment of judges?
So I think impeachment is only for the president, sir.
Huh?
I think impeachment must be used only for the
You think
president.
you have read the right books.
Thank you, sir.
You see, the books are written by university professors with the title impeachment of judge. The Supreme Court judgments speak of impeachment of judge. Part of the text of the judgments of the Supreme Court, they talk of impeachment of judge. Supreme Court judges and chief justices have talked, I have heard with my own ears, of the impeachment of judge. But the Constitution has no provision for impeachment of a judge. As you rightly say, impeachment is only for the President of India. It's another example of only a person like you who might have read the right kind of book would say that it is only for the President of India.
Sir, in the Secretariat daily book, I read only the Constitution, sir.
Huh?
I read only the Constitution. That's why I'm able to say the authority.
Which very few people do.
Yes.
Yes. Is that all right?
Yes, sir.
Shall
Thank you,
we
sir.
move to the next?
Yes, sir. Next question, sir.
Good evening, sir. My name is Sath again, and first of all, I'm deeply privileged and honored to be part of this forum. I have an interaction, discussion rather than a debate also with you. And my question is basically about Aadhaar, actually.
But if you'll excuse me for a minute, I don't want to skip any question. You had also asked for voting week made compulsory.
Yeah.
Sorry, just one second.
Fine, sir.
My mistake, excuse me. You see, right to vote, it may be argued by legal luminaries that right to vote includes the right not to vote. Right to vote includes the right not to vote, just as the right to speak includes the right not to speak. So if any attempt is made to make the right to vote compulsory, then questions will be raised about its constitutional validity, because it will mean that you want to use force or economic sanctions for not voting. So if voting is a right, not voting is also included there. That is one. Second, my humble suggestion has been that if the purpose of compulsory voting is to increase the percentage of voters, it can be very well done through the device of making right to vote, instead of remaining a right to vote, should become a fundamental citizenship duty. It should become a fundamental citizenship duty included in the fundamental duties chapter, and it should not be forced, but there should be incentives and disincentives provided for voting or not voting. Incentives will be, for example, large number of those who go abroad on foreign jaunts and trips. They need a passport, which is given to a citizen of India. It may be made absolutely necessary, categorically necessary, for everyone applying for a passport to show certificate of voting in the last election. And certificate of voting can be produced by the voting machines very easily. Technologically, there is no difficulty. Each voter can be given a certificate of voting at the time he votes. So all those who go abroad and most often do not go to the polling booth, they will be covered. Then certain income tax rebates are allowed under different provisions. Make that subject to production of certificate of voting. The income tax payers will be covered. They are another category of persons who do not always go to vote. Third, ration card. Fourth, below poverty line certificate. Make all of them subject to production of certificate of voting. And this can be easily done under the Representation of People Act. No constitutional amendment is necessary. And my calculation is that if these things are done easily, you will come to have more than 90% voting at every election without making it compulsory. Sorry. Now you can go with the next question. Otherwise, the friend would have thought that I avoided that question.
So my question is about Aadhaar. Actually, so with respect to Aadhaar, like we have Supreme Court is still inclusive, no, the matter is still under subjudice. And with respect to the UPA government, which is in opposition right now, they oppose it. They are the ones who initiated Aadhaar, but they oppose it strongly right now. And the present NDA government, which they have opposed last time, and they are like they made it compulsory indirectly to by making it as a money bill and they passing to the other targeted delivery of services, right? But my question is, should Aadhaar be made compulsory, and are we in a situation to take that? Is it against the fundamental right to life, right to privacy? Because like in a country where like we have instances that even the credit cards and debit cards are being like they've been hacked. So are we in a situation to go under such a thing, go for biometrics?
The first thing is that the matter is sub judice, and being an old-fashioned briefless lawyer, I am also an advocate in the Supreme Court, even though briefless, rarely going to the court. And advocates are not supposed to speak on matters which are sub judice, except in the court itself. So that is one difficulty. Second, again, no right to privacy, or as I said earlier, no right is absolute. And all rights are subject to matters like national security, morality, etc. The reasonable restrictions are all given in the fundamental rights chapter. In fact, some people called it a chapter on restrictions on fundamental rights than chapter on fundamental rights. But the fact is that restrictions have to be read in every fundamental right. In the United States, where restrictions were not made a part of the fundamental rights, they had to be inserted by judicial judgments. So every fundamental right, by definition, is subject to restrictions on it. in national interest and interest of national security, etc. So I don't think on principle we can find fault with the right to privacy being affected if Aadhaar cards are considered necessary in the interest of safeguarding the interests of the nation.
Thank you, sir. Very happy to see that, like you being a lawyer, though it was a subsidized matter, you spoke for it. Thank you, sir. And now we go to the 10th question, sir. The question goes this way: are the state legislative councils important, and what are their role, and can that be made mandatory?
This is more a political question than a constitutional question. I'll tell you a little background. In the Constituent Assembly, there was very heated discussion on the topic of bicameralism, whether every house should be only one house, legislative assembly and Lok Sabha, or they should be the other house. It was referred to more than one committees, no agreement was possible. It was discussed in the Constituent Assembly, no agreement was possible. Finally, there used to be an informal mechanism in the Constituent Assembly, and that was that when a problem became absolutely intractable and not soluble by in the Constituent Assembly, there used to be a meeting in what is now Rashtrapati Bhavan with Raghubrachari in the chair and about 10 persons who included Jawaharlal Nehru, Sardar Patel, Dr. Ambedkar, K. M. Munshi, Annadi Krishna Swami Iyer, K. M. Munshi, and about 10 of them. They would meet informally with the Governor General in chair, and they would try to sort it out. There also, on this topic, it was not found to agree. Nehru and Patel were on opposite sides. And finally, at the end of it, Patel stood up and he said, I have it from the person who was present at that meeting, and senior officer of the Constituent Assembly. Patel stood up and said, my dear friends, an unemployed politician is a social menace. An unemployed politician is a social menace. We shall have the upper houses. We shall have the upper houses. So it was decided to have the upper houses. But Nehru was opposed to it, and subsequently, in the Constitution, he again saw to it that although second chamber was conceded at the union level, at the state level it was left to state assemblies to decide whether they want to have the other house. And that is the present position. It is for each state assembly to decide whether they want to have the other house. That is the present position. So it is a matter of political opinion whether you want the upper house or not.
Thank you, sir, and thank you for sharing
It is no more a revising chamber or a reviewing chamber. It is not a relationship between the cup and the saucer, as they say in the United States. It is because in India, unlike UK, both the houses are reviewing chambers and legislation can be initiated in either house, except money bills, which can be initiated only in Lok Sabha, and in case of the states, only in the assemblies. All other bills can be initiated in either house, and depending on where they are initiated, the other house becomes a reviewing chamber. So that justification is no more there.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for taking us to the case with respect to the Constitutional Assembly and the discussion that was happening then. Sir, now I'll go to this 11th question. It goes this way, sir. Is it time to have an objective review of the reservation with respect to Article 16? Please share your opinion.
Well, it's a highly controversial issue, but I can tell you, in the Constituent Assembly, Dr. Ambedkar was one person who was strongly opposed to reservation in perpetuity. It is not often talked about, but Dr. Ambedkar, who is in fact very often ascribed the fatherhood of the reservation provisions, he was, I can tell you definitely, And because for various reasons, documentary and otherwise, I can also brag about being one of those leftovers of history who had occasion to sit with Dr. Ambedkar and talk to him face to face and one to one. I was a young officer in Parliament then, and Dr. Ambedkar was a regular visitor to the Parliament library, and there were many matters on which I talked to him. But there is also otherwise documentary evidence available in the Constitutional Assembly debates to the effect that Dr. Ambedkar was opposed to reservation in perpetuity. He said, I do not want this stigma of any class of people being backward, Dalit, depressed, etc., to become a permanent feature of Indian society. I am for a casteless, classless society. Incidentally, he was opposed to reservation being only for 10 years. He wanted it 40 years. He said 10 years is too short a period to bring them up to the level of others. So it should be 40 years. But he added, but thereafter, Parliament should have no power to extend it by law. Do it for 40 years, but after 40 years, Parliament should have no power to extend it by law. Because he knew that it will become more a question of vote bank politics and it will be politicized. And the danger was that that stigma may never go away. And at another time, Dr. Ambedkar said that he was born in a caste, but he did not want to die as belonging to a particular caste. And so he changed to Buddhism. But look and behold our ingenuity and ingenuity of Parliament, that we introduced scheduled caste business even among the Buddhists. Because by an amendment, the scheduled caste category has been extended to Buddhists. So even after changing to Buddhism, you continue to belong to the scheduled caste. So, you can draw your own conclusions. In this regard, some people have suggested that now it is too late to do away with the reservations with a hammer. And the reason, justification is also obvious, because very little has been done. Very honestly, very little has been done to bring up the scheduled castes and the tribal people and others to the level of the others in society. Very little has been done. Reservation is not a solution. The real thing was that you should try to bring them up to your level. Because there is no virtue. Right now there is a competition in backwardness. I am more backward than you. I am more depressed than you. So this competition in backwardness is not a healthy sign of any society. So some people have suggested that there should be progressive de-reservation. Progressive de-reservation. Those who have become IAS officers, those who have become members of Parliament, their children should not anymore have the benefit of reservation. Those who are still in a particular condition, they should have the benefit of reservation. What now happens is that only the elite among the classes, the elite amongst them, they become greater exploiters of their society, and they capture all the benefits of reservation. And the man who really needs it is still sitting on the roadside and repairing shoes.
Yes, sir. You brought us the real plight of how reservation is being used in India, sir. Now let's go to the 12th question. It goes this way, sir. Why can't the legislature bring in a list of basic structure as the Parliament has the power to amend the Constitution? Because nowadays it's the judiciary which comes with now and then with its own judgment what is basic structure. So the Parliament having the power to amend the Constitution, why can't they bring in a quick list of basic structures, sir?
If you look at the Constitution, Article 368, which provides for amendments to the Constitution, it uses the word only. It can be amended only by Parliament. The word only is significant. Constitution can be amended only by a bill brought out in either house of the Parliament, and then the procedure provided both houses passing by the two-third majority and the states ratification in certain cases and so on. So the word only is significant. Only, but our blessed Supreme Court, what it has done, it has deprived the Parliament of the only power that they had to amend the Constitution, and they have arrogated to themselves the power even to amend the Constitution. Not only to legislate, but even to amend the Constitution, because they have, by various judgments, assumed the power of deciding the judicial viability of even constitutional amendments. Whether a constitutional amendment is ultra vires to the Constitution or it should be allowed depends on the goodwill of the Supreme Court judges. And the mischievous, I call it mischievous, without being guilty of contempt of court. It is, I think, the doctrine of basic features of the Constitution is the most unhealthy, to say the least, of doctrines invented by the Supreme Court under its what they call the creative jurisprudence, the so-called creative jurisprudence and creative powers of the courts. I am a strong opponent of the basic features doctrine.
Thank you, sir. And now for the 13th question. Of course, this says, can the President of India be given more commanding powers without disturbing the parliamentary form of government? Something similar to the French system where the President has some more power.
You see, for two things, sorry for putting you short, but two things. First, you have to decide whether you have the parliamentary form of, and if parliamentary form of government, is it the parliamentary form of the British type? I don't think we have the parliamentary form of government of the British type. We have continued the colonial model of governance in this country. It is not British. Of the about 12 basic essentials of the British parliamentary system, not one operates in India, not under the Constitution of India. And in an article which I wrote in 1967, with the title Presidential System for India, I said that we are a republic. What are the essential characteristics of a presidential system? Federalism. We have a federalist structure. We are not tired of talking federalism, whether cooperative or competitive or others. We are a republic. The head of the state is directly elected, is elected by the people through an electoral college, as in the United States. In the United States also, it is not direct election by the people. It is through an electoral college. One common myth is that in the United States it is elected directly, and here it is through an electoral college. It is through an electoral college there as also here. And all executive powers rest on the president and are to be exercised, to quote the actual words of the Constitution, and are to be exercised by him, that is by the president, either directly or through officers subordinate to him. All executive powers are to be exercised. What more do you want? In fact, I said in that article that time, and I still hold that view, if the first president of India was Jawaharlal Nehru, and the first prime minister was Rajendra Prasad, and both had continued in that position together for 12 years, as they did, then today we would have been talking of our system being presidential and not parliamentary. Just change of two phases. And I can prove it to you by looking at the provisions of the Constitution. It was, again, to go back to what Kashyap and Ambedkar said, it depends upon how you work the Constitution. The Constitution is not only the name of that inert, lifeless book which contains provisions of the Constitution. Constitution is how it is actually worked, what system it gives you in operation. So if it was worked differently and change of these two personalities, if Nehru was president, he would have used all his powers as president and Hasan Bashar would have obliged. So depends upon what you mean by parliamentary. We can argue that it is not parliamentary and we can also argue that it is presidential. Actually it is a combination of the two. It is a hybrid system. It is a hybrid system, combination between federal and unitary, combination between presidential and parliamentary, and so on.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for giving an answer which I think like we aspirants, if not we, the aspirants are sitting here, I think they would have got a better picture of like what our constitution actually wanted to be. Thank you, sir. The next question, sir, number 14. It goes this way: most of the constitutional posts, say MP, MLA, do not have specifically mentioned qualification, particularly the educational qualifications. Is it not obsolete, sir? Because we have
in parliament and state legislatures, whom do you want? You want representatives of the people, or you want PhDs and MAs? The credential of a member of parliament is that he is and should be representative of the people. There is a common misconception that members of parliament are illiterate. Let me tell you, statistically you will find that the first Lok Sabha, which included persons like Nehru and so many dignitaries, that was the most ill-educated. And the present Lok Sabha is the most educated. If you go by qualifications, it can be seen the actual statistics. The educational level of members has been constantly improving. You have more PhDs, more MAs, more engineers, more doctors, more highly educated people in parliament, in subsequent parliaments. And I am guilty of having seen all parliaments at work right from the first Lok Sabha. I guilty of having spent more than 37 years sitting in parliament, and right from Nehru and Mavlakar's time. I can tell you the number of non-matriculates, and we use the term non-matriculate instead of using the term illiterate. The number of non-matriculates was about 10% in the first Lok Sabha. Right now, it is 0.2. So you do not have any more illiterate or non-matriculate members. It is a different matter whether the degrees are fake or real. Forget that. But if you go by qualification, that is the only indicator we have, then you will find the subsequent Lok Sabhas have been more educated, and I believe that applies to state legislators also. And if you prescribe any qualifications, you know, in recent years, with the help of the Supreme Court, you provided for members revealing their economic interests and their criminal background, etc. After that, those provisions, those orders were implemented, the number of persons with criminal background has gone up, and it's constantly going up. The number of crorepati's is also going up. So that has not worked as a check either on crorepati's coming to parliament or on persons with criminal background coming to parliament. In fact, it has gone the other way around. So if you provide for education qualifications, that might also work the other way.
Thank you,
So
sir.
don't think of change for the sake of change only.
Thank you, sir. Your answer was witty, crispy, and made us to think about it. Thank you, sir. And now let me go to the 15th question. It goes this way: what are the checks to prevent the misuse of power of parliamentary privileges under Article 105/194?
Well, the intentions of constitution makers in providing for parliamentary privileges was very noble and good, but it depends upon, again, depends upon how it is actually worked in practice and how it is operated. The way provisions in regard to parliamentary privileges have been used has not been very heavy, and even today the law as it stands, there is no parliamentary privilege in matters of criminal law. For any criminal act, member of parliament is nothing more than any other ordinary citizen. They are subject to the same laws, and so far as the law is concerned, they have to be treated at par with all ordinary citizens of the country. But the way it operates is unfortunately very different. The parliamentary privileges were given to members and to the houses and to committees only to ensure that they can work freely and without obstruction, without hindrance in discharging their parliamentary duties. It is not given to them for the sake of becoming super citizens or bosses of ordinary citizens or a separate privileged class. Because a separate privileged class is the antithesis of the republican system, that is also antithesis of democratic order also.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. And now we'll go to the 16th question.
Good evening, sir. It is very refreshing to share an evening with you, sir. My question is about the existing current gridlock between the judiciary and the executive regarding the appointment of judges, the memorandum of procedure which is being discussed, and reform of collegium. What is your opinion about that, sir? And what can be a practical solution?
Practical solution is in the hands of the operators of the system, the judiciary, the executive, and the legislature. But as for my opinion, I believe that if the constitution is respected and each organ, the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary, if they keep within their assigned roles, perform their duties in discharging the role that has been assigned to them, there will be no problem. Actually, what is happening, none of the three are doing their job properly. Recent developments notwithstanding, the history of last 6 to 7 years or so has been that the executive, whether political or administrative, they are not performing their duties well. The legislature is not doing it. Houses of Parliament get adjourned day after day, and crores per day are spent on Parliament. The same is true of state legislatures. The judiciary, again, they have more than 3 crores of cases pending. They are not attending to clearing that backlog, and they are fighting on flimsy grounds on matters like procedure for appointment of judges, memorandum, and etc. etc. So if each one would do its own job, because the powers of each organ are clearly defined and delimited by the Constitution. No organ of the state is supreme under the Constitution of India, not even the Supreme Court, not even the Parliament. In the British system, at least in theory, Parliament is supreme. In American system, the judiciary is supreme. But in our system, neither Parliament nor judiciary nor executive can claim to be supreme or sovereign. Sovereignty or supremacy vests in the Constitution and above the constitution in the people of India, not in any one of governments. After all, judgments of the Supreme Court have also to be implemented by the executive. Any executive worth its salt, and I hope I'm not speaking for the press, but for friends like you, any executive worth its salt would not crawl before the judiciary as governments have been doing in the past. Because after all, who is to implement? If judiciary indulges in acts which are patently unconstitutional, for example, in the judges' appointment case, I believe that the judgment of the Supreme Court itself is unconstitutional. If the Supreme Court itself gives unconstitutional judgments, is the President of India bound to accept? He also takes an oath by the Constitution. The Prime Minister and ministers also take oath by the Constitution, not by the judiciary. If they are definite that the Constitution says something different from what the Supreme Court is saying, they can refuse to implement the unconstitutional judgments. After all, what the Constitution says in regard to appointment of judges. Look up the copy of the Constitution. It is for the President to appoint judges of the court after consultation with the Chief Justice and such other judges as the President may like. It is the President who has to appoint. How can the Supreme Court take away this power from the President and arrogate it to itself to appoint their judges? Nowhere in the world has the judiciary the power, sole power to appoint brother judges. It is only in India, Indian Constitution. So it is up to the government, it is up to the government to show good spine and courage and character. Why should we accept unconstitutional things coming from the Supreme Court? Yeah. The Constitution does not provide for collegium. The Constitution does not provide for collegium. It is for the President to decide whom he wants to consult among the judges. The Constitution is very clear. If there is some vagueness, the Supreme Court can interpret it. But you look at the article 124, it is very clear, crystal clear. It is the President, that is the government of India, who have to do it after, not only, not in consultation. If you say they have to do it in consultation, then the process of consultation is different. But after consultation, which means you have only to consult, and after consulting you take a decision. So if the Constitution is that clear, how do we bend or crawl? I do not understand.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir.